So Heath, the cyber mentor Adams, is a senior security engineer and founder of TCM Security. He has a strong background in network administration and information security, including penetration testing, network design and implementation, network security. Heath currently holds multiple cybersecurity-related certifications, including the OSCP, the OSWP, and the EWPT. Heath also proudly served as an officer in the Army Reserve. Outside of work, he is an online cybersecurity instructor, YouTuber, and Twitch live streamer. When Heath is not at work, he enjoys spending time with his wife, Amber, and their 4 animal children. So here we have the top 5 ways I own your internal network. Thanks for speaking today. So this is a sneaky book. Sorry, here's a last. Thank you. Good luck.
Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about the top 5 ways I owned your internal network. Really quick, who am I? So you already kind of got the introduction. She covered a lot of it. But I am a husband, hacker, military vet. I enjoy gaming, Overwatch mostly, sports fan, and animal dad. We're actually up to 5 animals now. We're close to the limit on the city, so don't tell them. But former accountant, joined security not too long ago, about 3 years ago. Really hated accounting and made the switch over. So day-to-day senior security engineer and business owner at TCM Security. And I do run a couple of projects. So one is VeteranSec. If anybody in here is a military veteran, we have a nonprofit organization. Basically, it is for anybody that is current, former, doesn't matter the country, military that is interested in cybersecurity, works in cybersecurity. And there is close to 1,000 of us now in that group. So we just help each other out. We do resume reviews or just networking, help each other find jobs, etc. So if you're interested in that project, veteransec.com. The other project that I do is called the Cyber Mentor. So I am a YouTuber mainly. I do Twitch streaming and just makes cybersecurity videos, usually related to ethical hacking or penetration testing. So if you are interested, there is some material on there. If you're interested in becoming an ethical hacker, there's a lot of material on there. Other than that, I do blog over at veteransec.com. Occasionally I write on tcm-sec.com. And you can find me pretty much Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, wherever at the Cyber Mentor. Okay, so briefly, why this talk? So there are a couple of reasons. Offensively, we want to know how can we leverage these attacks inside of a network. Defensively, we're going to talk about how can we defend against these attacks, at least talk strategies. And this is also for awareness. So many of you might not have heard of these attacks at all. So how can we attack or defend if you don't know about it? So just bringing awareness to some of these topics. Quick notes. So this is talking about internal networks. Internal network assumes breach. So when we do a pen test on an internal network, that means that either we were doing an external test, we already got in, we left a Dropbox, we social engineered, it doesn't matter, we're inside the network. So when we talk about internals, we're just inside the network. This talk is based on my experience as a pen tester. Your mileage may vary. If you are a pen tester here, you might think that your top 5 is way different than mine. So in my career as a pen tester, this has been my top 5. And the only thing I ask for is if you please just hold questions till the end, that way we can get through it. I was going to do a live demo today. We've been having issues with live demos, so I've got everything in the slides as well. So we should have plenty of time. If there's questions or there's plenty of time, I'll be available to talk afterwards if you want, plus I've got stickers. So, okay, so the first one is what's known as LLMNR. That's Link Local Multi-Name Resolution. So basically what it is it's used to identify hosts in a network when DNS fails to do so. This was previously known as NBTNS. And the key flaw here is that the service utilizes a user's username and their NTLM v2 hash when appropriately responded to. So we're going to use a tool called Responder to respond to these requests. So before we get into the attack, let's talk about how it kind of works. So we have a victim, and the victim here is trying to connect to a share. Let's just say the share is called HackMe. For whatever reason, they try to connect to the share, and they put HackM, and it doesn't know how to resolve. The server doesn't know what it's talking about. So what's going to happen is the victim is going to send out a broadcast message over the whole network and it's going to say, hey, does anybody know how to connect to this HackM? And as the hacker sitting in the middle, we're going to say, yeah, I do. Just go ahead and send me your hash, and I'll get you connected over there. And the victim's just going to say, here you go, here's my hash. So what that looks like is we're going to boot up a tool called Responder now. Responder is part of Impacket, so there's an Impacket toolkit. If you've never used it, it does come built into Kali. The GitHub version, I think, is better, so I would recommend if you're interested in running these tools or practicing in a home lab, the GitHub version is a little bit better. So we run Responder here, and we are just sitting here listening for events. And then we trigger an event. So here is, again, that network access error, trying to connect to a share that doesn't exist. And when that happens in the network, all of a sudden a hash comes through. So we can see information here already that this is, the hash type is an NTLM v2 hash. It came over SMB version 2. And we identify the IP address that it came from. We identify the domain, which is Marvel, and we identify fcastle as the user. And then on top of that, we get the user's hash credentials. So depending on the security of their password or the complexity and length of their password, we might be able to actually crack this. So we could take this hash offline, run it through something like John or Hashcat, and we try to crack it. And when you see a weak password like this, like password1, we're going to get it all day. So this is still very common in networks where the password policies are like 6, 8, even 10 characters. We get these hashes, we take them offline, we crack them, and then we use that to move laterally in networks. So this is probably one of the first things I'll do. I will usually, when I'm doing a pen test, I will boot up Responder as one of the first things. Good time to do it is at like 8 in the morning or right after everybody's getting back from lunch, because you need a lot of traffic in the network for this to actually be successful. So overnight, usually not the best idea. But so we'll run this. We might run scanning or different types of scans in the network to generate some traffic and maybe get this moving. But let's talk about defenses really quick. And this first one, this LLMNR poisoning, is going to come back into play here in a few minutes as well with another attack. So the best resolution here is to disable LLMNR and MBTNS. So if you just disable LLMNR, then MBTS takes over, and you still have the same kind of issue. If there was a reason that a company does not disable this, or cannot disable this, then we would recommend to use network access control. So if an attacker can't, just easily plug in a device and get access to your network. And also, the thing that really blocks this attack is to have strong, unique passwords. You're going to see later in one of the attacks, we have a 14-character password that gets cracked. And I think that we have, the longest I've cracked is a 19-character password, which was a Bible verse. So like it really is more of not using common words with a combination of length and a combination of complexity. So not just length in the policy is really big. And you're going to see that as a common theme. And as an attacker, bad passwords are what's going to get us around the network more often than anything else. Okay, so the second one is called pass the password or pass the hash. So if we crack a password like we just did, or we can dump SAM hashes on a machine, then we can leverage both of those for lateral movement. And we can use a tool called crackmapexec to do that. So crackmapexec just takes if you see here, the username of Frank Castle, the domain of Marvel, and then the password that we cracked. And all we do is we sweep that subnet that we're in. And you can see that it found not only the Punisher, which was at .7, it found Spider-Man over at .6 as well. So this user has local admin rights on this machine. And from here, I mean, we can use something like psexec to get onto the machine. We can use crackmapexec with like a switch of --sam to dump the SAM hashes off of this machine as well. So just being able to pass this password around is super critical. I had a assessment 2 weeks ago that was using CyberArk. So if you don't know CyberArk, it's a privileged access management tool. Basically, it is a password rotation tool. They utilize complex passwords. You log in as a user, and then in order to get your accounts, you'll check out an account. That password is good for like 8 hours. Then you check back in the account, that password rotates. So cracking those passwords via LLMNR, very, very difficult to do. But we were able to do one of the other attacks that you'll see here in a minute, which is called SMB Relay, get onto a machine and dump the hashes. One of the hashes was a tech support user. Didn't have to crack the password at all, just passed it around and got into every single machine in the network. So password reuse like this is very common, especially at the local level. And that was a company that spent millions of dollars on cybersecurity, and we owned the domain controller without ever touching a domain account, ever compromising a domain account. So super critical to care about not only your domain passwords, but also your local passwords here. Same thing with the local hashes. Again, you don't have to have a password. So if we just grab the hash here and we put it into CrackMap, we can try to pass it around. In this instance, this password wasn't actually, this local account wasn't reused, so we only pwned the same machine that we had before. But again, this is a situation where we would use this tool and try to get multiple machines in the network and just get lateral movement, because you never know what you're going to find on the next machine. Okay, so this is hard to completely prevent, but we can make it a lot more difficult. So limiting account reuse. So avoid using local admin passwords, reusing the local admin passwords. Disable your guest accounts, disable your admin accounts. Limit who is a local administrator. I know everybody in the network wants to be a local admin, but they don't need to be a local admin. On top of this, utilizing strong passwords. Again, this is a theme that you're going to see come through over and over again. The longer the better. Long sentence, like a 40-character sentence, perfect, never going to get cracked. And then again, privilege access management can help prevent some of this pass the hash, pass the password attacks. So a tool like CyberArk or a tool like Thycotic can really help improve your security overall when it comes to this attack. Okay, so the next one is token impersonation. So what are tokens? They're just temporary keys on a machine. You can think of them like a cookie for a machine, essentially. And there are two types of tokens that you see. So one's called a delegate, which if you logged into that machine or you use remote desktop to log into that machine, you're going to leave behind a delegate token. The other one is impersonate. So this is non-interactive. So delegates you can think of as interactive. Impersonate you can think of as non-interactive. And basically that is like attaching a network drive, having a domain logon script, etc. So what happens is, if a user, say you're using your computer, but for whatever reason a domain admin remotes into that desktop, or a help desk remotes in that desktop, and they've got domain admin privileges, they're leaving behind this token until the computer is restarted. So let's see why it's bad. So here is the user. You see we've got authority system here, so we own the system, but we can actually impersonate this Marvel F Castle. This is the machine we owned. He's actively logged in. We can impersonate him and act as if we are a user on the domain. So when we impersonate this token, here you see up at the top, we initialize a shell, and then we do a whoami, and you see now that we are Marvel Frank Castle. Come through, and we try to run a Mimikatz command here. This is a PowerShell version of Mimikatz, and basically what we're trying to do is access the domain controller and dump the NTDS or the LSA, and get all the passwords, or at least the hashes, and take those offline and either utilize them or try to crack them, etc. So here we have access denied because this user is not a domain administrator. However, if a domain admin was available, we can repeat the process, and you see that Marvel administrator is actually here. We impersonate the administrator, we say, who am I? Again, now we are Marvel administrator. We run the same command over again, and we dump all the hashes. So once we own the Kerberoast ticket granting ticket hash, we own your domain. We can do a golden ticket attack and pretty much log into any machine we want. Once we take these hashes also, we will take these hashes offline and try to crack them. We do this because this will give us an idea of what your password policy was and how strong your passwords are. So if we're cracking 30% or 50% of your passwords, we can bring that back and give you statistics and say, hey, like this is really bad. This is something that you need to focus on, and actually have some data to back it up. So mitigation strategies. Limit your user or group token creation permissions. So the mitigation strategies are kind of difficult. It's hard to prevent fully. Another thing is account tiering. So if you have, say you have Bob, and Bob's a domain administrator, you should have Bob have a local or a regular domain user account, and then maybe a Bob-A for a domain administrator. And Bob-A only logs into the domain controller. You know, you're not using that domain admin account anywhere else in the network other than domain controllers. This will prevent us from ever being able to compromise an account with token impersonation, at least one that is sensitive to do anything incredibly damaging. And again, local admin restriction. We're not able to run this attack if we can't be on the machine. So if we can't like PS exec or use something to get a local admin account and actually gain a shell on the machine, this isn't going to happen anyways. So it's all a common theme here, and it's just going to keep repeating itself. And it's just these really common things that can take down major networks. All right, so when I told you guys earlier that responder would come back into play, this is where it comes back into play. And this is called SMB Relay. So basically, instead of capturing the hashes and taking them offline and trying to crack them, what we can do is pass that hash over in what's called a relay attack, and we can try to gain access to a machine with that account. Now, the account that's being relayed has to be an admin on the machine for it to be any sort of useful information that we're going to gather. The other thing is, the big thing here is that SMB signing has to be disabled. Now, that's useful because SMB signing is disabled on all regular Windows operating systems. Only the servers come with SMB enabled, signing enabled. So unless an administrator has already gone in here and done this, this could be an attack that easily gets us onto other machines. So again, the relayed credential has to be not only a credential that's coming from a different machine, but it has to be an administrator on that machine as well. So we've got administrators in the networks on multiple machines. This is where things can get bad. So one thing that we do is we turn off the SMB and HTTP capturing because we're actually just going to relay this. We take this off of responder, and it just kind of looks like this. Instead of where it was all green, now it kind of looks like a little bit of a Christmas tree. It's got some red, some green, just saying that it's off. And we put up another tool, which is called NTLM Relay X. The other tool that we could use here is SMB Relay. So both kind of do similar things. Here we're selecting a target file, so we'll put the targets that we want to identify. Maybe we've done a scan, we've identified what users or what machines have SMB signing disabled, and we just target those with anything in the network. So we sit here, we listen, we wait. An event occurs again, same thing as before. But this time, you can see that the attack has succeeded. It's trying to connect from 10.0.3.7 against 10.0.3.6. Marvel Frank Castle is an administrator on that machine. So it connects, and then automatically, you can see down there, it dumps the SAM. So we've got all the local machine or local account hashes on that machine. Other things that you can do, you can utilize like Metasploit, Empire, and you can actually add a command back. Like in this NTLM Relay X, we can actually use a command feature and push a command in that will give a shell back to us, and we can have full interaction with this. Another way to do that is with SMB Relay. You can use socks and have a shell on that as well. So this is very bad and still very common. And all the mitigation strategies are still going to be kind of the same as what you're seeing before. So we can enable SMB signing on all devices. That is the recommendation that we make as pen testers. This can be an issue. It can cause file performance issues. The data that's out there says 15% increase in time for file transfers. Some people have reported longer. So you might get some, as an administrator, you might get some feedback from your users that file transfers are taking longer. But it is for security purposes. You could also disable NTLM authentication. So if you don't have the NTLM to authenticate with, this attack won't work either. But if Kerberoast stops working, then Windows will default back to NTLM. So on top of that, again, the account tiering that we talked about, having your domain admins, and your powerful accounts not be allowed to be relayed like this. So you have to limit that. Same thing with the local admin restriction. So you might run into issues where it might increase the amount of service tickets. If you're limiting the local admin, people will need something to be installed. They're going to put in help desk tickets for that since they can't do it themselves. So it might cause some headaches, but again, it's for the better of security. Okay, last one is Kerberoasting. So Kerberoasting, basically, Kerberoast is a way of authentication method, right? So if we look here, we've got a domain controller up at the top of the triangle. We can call this domain controller a KDC, that's a key distribution center. So what's going to happen is the victim or the user is going to request a ticket, and this is how authentication works. We request a ticket, provide our NTLM hash, and we receive a TGT back, which is a ticket granting ticket. So, and that comes back encrypted with the Kerberos ticketing hash. And the only thing that we need to do this is a valid account credential. So if we've compromised a domain account at all, we've got a username and a password, this attack is going to work. It's not going to be successful, but you're at least going to be able to do part of it. So the second part of this is we have this application server down here. It can be an application server, it can be a SQL server, it can be whatever you want. When we have these applications in the network, they have what's called a service principal name, or an SPN, and that's going to come back here and play in a second. So what we do is say we want to access this application server. Well, we're going to say to the KDC, I want a service ticket, a TGS, for this server. It's going to say, OK, I will give you a service ticket. I'm going to encrypt that with the server's hash. So we're going to take that TGS that's encrypted with the server's hash, and we're going to pass that over to the server. And if we have access to the server, it's going to decrypt it on the server side. And if we have access to it, it'll give us access. The whole process for us as an attacker stops at 4. So we're only receiving that ticket because it's encrypted with a hash. So this looks something like this. So we run an attack. Again, ImPacket comes into play, and we say Python get user SPNs. So we're getting the SPNs in the network. You see I'm using the Frank Castle password that I've gathered before. I'm identifying the domain controller IP address, and then I'm using a request. So I'm requesting this, and out comes this Kerberos ticket granting service ticket hash here down at the bottom. And another thing that we can see here, and this is super common in networks, this is why this is really dangerous, is if you look at the SQL service here that's been requested, it's a member of the domain administrators. We see services as domain administrators all the time. And this is where it gets really bad. So if we have an account with a bad password that's utilizing services, and that account is a domain administrator, it's also a game over situation. So here we go into hashcat again. We attempt to crack the hash, and you see that we have cracked a 14-character hash of my password 123 pound. So even though it is 14 characters, really not that secure of a password, and now we've owned a domain administrator. So mitigation strategies here: strong passwords, least privilege. It's really what it comes down to. Questions? Yes. Not enforced is also good. Yep. Yes. I'm not a blue teamer, so I'm not strong in the detection side of it, honestly. So. Yes. Depends on the organization. So if they've got like a 6 or 8 character password policy, you're looking at like at least 50%. The one that I was talking about last week, or 2 weeks ago, where I was up against CyberArk, we cracked 2 passwords out of the whole thing. So I mean, CyberArk works as long as you're utilizing strong and not reusing and using strong local passwords as well. So it just depends on the organization. But anywhere from, I would say 25% is probably the average. LLMNR poisoning. Yep. So I see that on pretty much every network I encounter. I don't know, I can't remember the last time I've seen it off. I think it really depends on your clients. Like I watched a Black Hills InfoSec, and they said they're seeing it on 1 of 3, but I'm guessing their clients are probably repeat. They kind of know. They might have more like of the elite clients as well. So they're probably seeing a decrease in that LLMNR on networks, but I see it pretty much everywhere. Yes. I don't think in the hash strength, no. Anything else? All right, thank you, everybody.